We would not be alive were it not for the ocean, and it actually has stabilised the environment to this point, but things are changing. I'm Mark Mellett. I'm the former Chief of Defence in Ireland. I'm retired over 2 years now, and when I retired I set up my own company called Green Compass. And Green Compass, the clue is in the name. I give advice on courageous leadership and the need to normalise sustainability. As a child I used to guide the cross-country walks in Castlebar, and where I saw bog, the people I used to guide, they saw a wonderful ecosystem. And I remember once a Dutch walker dropping to his knees and looking at this, what I just thought was a heap of moss, and he said there's about 30,000 plants in that, and in this water pool below it there are about 50,000 animals. And it blew me away in terms of just the outlook on what was a piece of real estate that we all call just bog. It was alive and it was teeming with life. And in the years that followed, I did my research and my PhD into ecosystem governance and discovered there were massive areas of vulnerable marine ecosystems, cold water corals, that could take 8,000 years to form. Many of the ecosystems have been destroyed. You know, we would not be alive were it not for the ocean. It absorbed about 25% of the carbon we put into the air, and it actually has stabilised the environment to this point, but things are changing. We do tend to look at climate change and biodiversity net gain from a land-centric perspective because we're human beings, we live on the land. But ocean ecosystems have also carbon sinks. Statistically, a square kilometre of seagrass, which actually grows in an intertidal area such as we have here behind me, is a massive carbon sink. Many of these seagrass ecosystems have been destroyed by trawling or by harvesting, but there is a real opportunity to recover those. If we can have biodiversity net gain, if we can re-stimulate biodiversity growth, if we can in fact rewild the ocean, we can have increased biodiversity recovery, biodiversity then absorption in terms of carbon. There is one worrying statistic that says by 2050 we may well have more plastic in the ocean than we have fish. And that's a consequence of our own, I suppose, inability to manage the waste that we generate. We need to actually be more careful in terms of how we manage runoff, how we manage waste, and with a view to ultimately trying to reuse and recycle. Information and data drive the creation of knowledge and technology. And if there is a get out of jail on this for human beings, it's going to be around technology. When I was born, the Keeling curve, which was the measurement of carbon in the air, had just started in Hawaii. And at that stage, there were 313 parts per million carbon in the air. Today, there are 420 parts per million. And by the time we get to net zero, there will be about 480 parts per million. So the 1.4, 1.5 degrees we're beginning to see now is destined to increase probably up to about 2.5 or 2.7 degrees. And the only way we can actually combat that is to stop putting carbon into the air. The opportunity that will come from the maritime is extraordinary. Ireland in particular has probably the largest accessible renewable energy resource on the planet. The government's plan towards 7 gigawatts in the early period up to 2030, 2032, and a further 30 gigawatts after that by 2050 is an extraordinary trajectory that we should follow and endeavour to stimulate. And in my role as the chair of the Maritime Area Regulatory Authority, that's what I'm endeavouring to do, is to hold feet to the fire, not just in terms of MARA, but the other institutions of government that will help that. So we create an environment where developers will see it a good place to invest, that we can drive on in terms of phase one on the east coast of Ireland and move into the new DMAP, which is the designated marine area plan, to the south of Ireland, and ultimately start moving towards where the richest resource is on the southwest and west coast. This will require almost a green revolution in terms of not just technology deployment, but also the skill levels that we need to build up in the context of our youngsters, apprenticeships, electricians, mariners. And we really can do this if we actually have the vision and the enterprise and the industrial strategy to drive on. We need to embrace sustainability and rather have it just as something we talk about. We need to understand it starts as individuals, it moves into the collective, and ultimately then it's a national responsibility. And the Climate Action Plan is trying to institutionalise that. I would also say that we shouldn't be afraid to actually have surplus energy coming ashore, because technologies such as carbon capture are coming down the track. And if we were to pull back from that 480 parts per million I mentioned, we're going to have to pull carbon out of the air. We need to try and get it back, well back to where it is at today, at 420 or even less.